Welcome along to the first Lorna Park of September. Tomas McCarthy here till 7 o'clock. Coming up over the next hour, seconds out, round 2. Brian Flannery previews this weekend's crucial senior hurling fixtures. Royal Rumble, Michelle Ryan on Sunday's All-Ireland Ladies final between Dublin and Meath. And into the West, Cappoquin's Donal O'Rourke on his role as Galway Camogie coach. So things are already hotting up in the County Senior Hurling Championship. 2 teams could be heading to the relegation playoffs this weekend, while others are eyeing up the quarter-finals. To preview round 2, delighted to be joined on the line by former Déise defender and Munster Express writer Brian Flannery. And Brian, De La Salle and Mount Sion 5:30 Welsh Park on Saturday is a game that really jumps off the page. It's a must-win game for De La Salle if they're to avoid those relegation playoffs. You watched their defeat to Dungarvan in Farfield last week. Where did they come up short in that game?
Yeah, look, I think you'd have to say, really, it's probably more down to the performance of Dungarvan rather than any shortcomings on De La Salle's behalf. I think Dungarvan's 2 county men gave an absolute exhibition. Darragh Lyons at centre-back covered an amount of ground for them. And I think at the other end of the field, then Patrick Curran was, really in top form and top scoring form. And 2 performances like that make a huge difference. But I think it was also the overall work rate that Dungarvan had. Young Michael Kiley, again, very good as well. And stalwarts like Jamie Nagle, very strong performances. John Corn, excellent as well. And really, I suppose there's very little between, if you look at that group, Mount Sion, De La Salle, Dungarvan. Before the start of the championship, you'd certainly have, as most people might have favoured, I suppose, De La Salle and Dungarvan as the 2 to come out. But I really don't think there's much between any of the 3 teams. And that said, the defeat does put an added pressure on De La Salle going into this Saturday's game. It's a game they dare not lose, really.
Absolutely, Brian. And you mentioned county men there. Like, De La Salle had 5 players on the Waterford squad this summer. Sean O'Brien, Shane McNulty, Jake Dillon, Kevin Moore and Jack Fagan. Will they be expecting to get more out of them on this occasion?
Yeah, when you look at the 5 senior hurl county players that De La Salle have, I know Tonto Douglas was in on the training panel as well with Liam Cahill. Reuben O'Halloran, I suppose, again, was an outstanding under-20 player. So, when you look at the other side of the coin, Mount Sion of Austin Gleeson. So it doesn't look a fair fight, really, to be honest with you, given the galaxy of inter-county stars that De La Salle have. Sometimes, I suppose, look, when an inter-county season ends, that transition back to the club sometimes can be a bit tricky, and it takes maybe players a game or 2 to get up to speed. And I know they've probably played a couple of challenge games with their club, but it can take a little bit of time. So I'd expect all those, De La Salle's inter-county stars, probably to be much sharper this weekend, having had that run out. And there's nothing like playing championship games where there's a bit of intensity. It means something. There's something on the line. And never more so, than this weekend. It really is all on the line for De La Salle. And I'm sure Brian Phelan will be looking to his main players to come up with the goods, because they literally cannot afford to lose.
And speaking of main players, Brian, like Austin Gleeson kind of inspired Mount Sion to the semi-finals last year. What will their target be now for 2022, do you think?
Yeah, look, I think, I suppose at the start of the championship, most people, if you're given an honest assessment of it, you'd probably say that Ballygunner are odds-on favourites, and you're looking at who's next up or who's best of the rest, really. And I think, in fairness, of all the other 12 clubs, I think each of them would fancy themselves, if they got a good run at it, ending up in the knockout stages and maybe getting a semi-final. And I'm sure Mount Sion, having been in the semi-final last year, lost out. I think there was only a couple of points in it between themselves and Passage. They'd be hoping certainly to get back to the knockout stages and maybe go one further and get to a county final and see maybe where that would take them. But it is I suppose it's a tough ask. There's the structure of the championship, you really get very few second chances. There's only 2 games. You really need to win at least one of them to go through, and probably need to, obviously if you a win and a draw guarantees you qualification. But a win for the way it has worked out, I suppose a win on Saturday will guarantee Mount Sign's progression to the knockout stages. So, it's not just, I suppose, De La Salle have a lot to play for. I think both clubs will be eyeing this one up. So it's a great opportunity. Obviously, there's been not a huge amount in between the sides in the last few years. And as I said, even despite the fact that De La Salle have far more inter-county stars than, I suppose, Mount Sign with just Austin, there has been very little between the sides in recent years. And again, it's very difficult to judge. Mount Sign have been playing a number of, I suppose, challenge games on the run in. De La Salle have the benefit of having played a championship game last weekend under their belt. They will have seen maybe where things didn't work out as well as they wanted. I'm sure they'll probably have a few positional switches and changes from last weekend as well. So I expect it will be a better De La Salle team that'll take the field, against Mount Sign this weekend. And it'll be a question of whether Mount Sign are I suppose, are good enough to meet that challenge. But they have been in recent years, in fairness, despite, I suppose, having, only Austin on the county team. A lot of the club players have really performed well. The likes of Luke O'Brien, both Martin O'Neill's, young PJ Fanning, Alec Kerwin. There's some good young club players, to augment, I suppose, the class and that Austin Gleeson brings to the table. So they'll be eyeing up this game as well. And as I said, I'm sure it's probably sold out at this stage. There'll be huge interest in this game and probably the game of the weekend.
Absolutely, Brian. And you have experience yourself of those city derbies, at De La Salle when you lined out at Mount Sign yourself. Do any memories of those games spring to mind?
Well, I was just thinking, I suppose, with COVID regulations, that probably want to make sure there's only one team goes down the tunnel at a time. There has often been an odd skirmish in the tunnel at Welsh Park, and sometimes things can get a little bit heated. But they are the games that you want to play in, against your neighbours and your rivals. And in fairness, Welsh Park is in fantastic condition as well. There's no better place to play this weekend, and it's just a pity we couldn't get a few more people into the stands, and hopefully that'll change over the coming weeks, because I know both clubs would have a strong interest in this game. And I suppose the hurling folk in general, particularly in the city, will want to watch this game. So it's a pity we couldn't get a few more into Welsh Park, but yeah, really looking forward to it. And as I said, there's there will definitely be intensity bought by both sides, and I think it'll probably need a strong hand by the referee to keep things in check and make sure that it as I said, that the focus is on the ball rather than the man. But I expect a good strong challenge from both teams.
Certainly so, Brian. And if Mount Sign and De La Salle will attract a big interest in the city, I'm sure Ballysaggart and Tallow will attract a lot of interest in the West 7:30 start Saturday night, Fairfield. Both teams coming off defeats last weekend. Who do you fancy to take the spoils here?
Yeah, again, it's another difficult one. And I think once you lose your first game in the championship under, as I said, this amended structure, you're under immediate pressure. And again, it's kind of last chance saloon for both clubs. Ballysaggart will probably feel they may have left it behind them. Last week they were ahead going down the stretch and got caught at the end. Tallow, I suppose, under Dennis Walsh have been building the last few years, introducing a few new younger players into their squad as well. Having said that, they still depend hugely on the performance of Tommy Ryan in attack to get a lot of their scores. They probably need a wider spread and need a little bit more support from the rest of the attack. Ballysaggart still waiting for their first senior championship win. It would be a brave man, I suppose, that would go for either side. But I think based on the first round performances, maybe Ballysaggart have, might have the slight advantage, but I wouldn't like too much on either side. This game could really go either way. But a huge amount on the line for both teams. As I said, the threat of relegation, two teams going down this year, is as strong, I suppose, a motive as the incentive to qualify for the knockout stages. So really another game where there's an awful lot on the line.
Yeah, it would be a huge result if Ballysaggart were to pull off their first championship win. But as you say, Tallow will have something to say about that. Looking at Sunday, Brian, Welsh Park, another standout game is Ballygunner versus Abbeyside, 1:30 throw-in. Do you see Abbeyside as potential challengers to the Gunners' crown this year?
Yeah, I was actually trying to rack my brain to see who was the last team to beat Ballygunner in championship. I'm assuming it was Passage back in the 2013 county final, but I do have a vague memory of infamous game in Fraher Field where the lights literally went out on Abbeyside when they looked set to knock Ballygunner out of the championship. So maybe they're the one side that has come closest in recent years. I suppose the other thing, Abbeyside have been building in the last few years as well. They've had a few, a number of good underage players coming through that are now eligible for senior. They certainly have maybe the ability to trouble the likes of Ballygunner. It will be interesting to see how that goes. Ballygunner are still the team that hold all the aces. It's just a matter of, I know we spoke this time last year, and I think I said that, Ballygunner are 10 points better than any other team in the county. I don't think I've seen anything to change my mind since. So you have to favour Ballygunner strongly in this. But I would be, I'll certainly be interested in watching and seeing how close Abbeyside can come and what sort of a challenge they can mount to Ballygunner. It's another game, maybe not as much riding on it than some of the other contests this weekend, but interesting nonetheless. And Abbeyside are, I suppose, a club as well as a team that have been improving hugely in recent years. I know at underage they've huge numbers and very good minor team this year as well. And some of those players will be eligible for senior next year. So I think in the next few years, if it's maybe not this year, you'd certainly expect Abbeyside to be contesting, county semi-finals and county finals.
Yeah, and like one of the leaders that Abbeyside will be building their team around, Brian, is Conor Prunty, the county captain. Potential all-star maybe a couple of months down the line. Could we see him facing off against Déise Hutchinson on Sunday after Hutchinson getting 1-6 against Ballyduff Upper first day out? Yeah,
I think it would need two all-stars to mark Déise Hutchinson, the form he's in at the moment. But yeah, look, that would be a great matchup. And, I suppose, look, Abbeyside have plenty of ability all over the field. Michael Kiley has really come on from where he left off last season as well. Montgomery, they've class and quality. Maybe not in as many or as deep a panel as what Ballygunner has to offer. But there's plenty, as I said, anybody who's lucky enough to get in, to Sunday in Welsh Park. I think it's another ticket worth trying to get your hands on, because there'll be plenty of matchups around the field, plenty of good contests. But I think when you add it all up, it's hard to see the reigning champions falling at this hurdle. Looking at the second game in Welsh Park, Brian, Rowan Moore versus Clonea, 3:45 throw-in. I suppose like De La Salle, Rowan Moore need a win to stay in the hunt and avoid those relegation playoffs. What did you make of Peter Quealy's men in their loss to Passage last weekend? Yeah, it was, I suppose, not just to defeat the Passage, but the manner of defeat. I was certainly surprised. I expected Rowan Moore to be a lot closer. I think there was 13 points in the game at one stage, and I think they fell behind early. They got hit with two early goals. Young Cummins and Mark Fitzgerald were absolutely outstanding, and they tore the Rowan Moore full backline to shreds early on. And I think that laid the foundation, and those early blows, they really struggled to get back into the game after that. And then just, I suppose, when you've had the chat at half time and you've tried to reorganize things, Peter Quealy as manager, and you 40 seconds, I think, into the second half, and you concede a third goal. And that kind of put Passage almost out of sight at that stage. So the game was kind of gone on them at that stage. So, I expect probably some changes. Cian Wadden made quite a difference when he came on. And I think some of the players that were introduced certainly, made an impact for Rowan Moore. And I think you could see some of them starting this week rather than on the bench. Again, it is last chance saloon. They can't afford to lose, and they're out of the championship. So they will certainly fancy themselves against Clonea. and will be favourites going into the game. Clonea, like again, not having played a championship game, I think the benefit or the advantages with Rowan Moore haven't had the advantage of that sort of warm-up championship game. I think you'd have to favour Rowan Moore in this one. But it'll be interesting to see Clonea. Clonea have been competitive, I suppose, in senior ranks in the last couple of years. I know they've Kieran Kerwin added to the side, who was on the Waterford senior panel. It'll be interesting to see what sort of an impact he can make for Clonea as well. Billy Power has always, I suppose, a threat as well. And it'll be interesting to see Gavin Power. They've plenty of good hurlers, Clonea. Whether, again, they just have enough of that scoring power, scoring threat to accumulate enough scores to beat Rowan Moore remains to be seen. But I'm sure Peter Queally will be looking for a much improved performance from Rowan Moore, because they were really a good bit off passage last weekend. So it's decision time this weekend.
It certainly is decision time, crunch time, whatever way you want to call it, Brian. And to finish off the weekend, we have a top of the table clash in Group A, Lismore versus 4 Mile Water, 6 o'clock in Fraherfield. And Maurice Shanahan was the real headline maker last weekend, 4-13 against Tallow. And I just want to play a little clip here of him speaking to our own Gavin Whelan after that game.
We treat it tonight like a county final to us, because it's a local derby, number one, Gavin. You know yourself, if you lose the first game, you're kind of in a relegation kind of battle. And in a group of 4, we might still be, Gav, because the teams, you see Ballysagar 4 Mile today was very close. So we have one win on the board. We treat it like a county final. It's a local derby. Thank God we won. We came out the good side of it, Gav.
Not a bad night for yourself, 4-13, I think a personal tally. You seem to be enjoying yourself out there, Mars.
What's not to enjoy summer hurling, so it's great to be out there with the lads. We drive on. Like I said, it was a derby. There's a few bragging rights up for stake, because last time we played Tallow bet us. So I just love hurling, Gavin. We keep going as long as we can, I suppose.
Could you make a case, Brian, that Morris is the best club hurler in Waterford at the moment?
Oh, I would say Maurice Shannon is probably the best club forward in Waterford for the last 10 years. And it was interesting, actually, the last day, both him, Maurice Shannon for Lismore and Tommy Ryan for Tallow. They're probably the two most impressive club forwards in the county for quite some time, in fairness to both of them. Even, when they're on the county panel, not on the county panel, they always turn up for their club. They're always play well for their club. And, I suppose Fraherfield must be like the back garden for Morris. I think he knows every blade of grass in it, every angle. His scoring rate is phenomenal. There's no other word for it. And, he's in recent years, he's been shooting the lights out, particularly in Fraherfield up there. It's just fantastic to watch a player who at the top of his game. And as I said, somebody who always performs for his club, and that's not always the case. We were talking about, county players, the difficulty coming back to their clubs. Doesn't always happen. And I know Morris has been, I suppose, away from the panel in the last year or that, but he's still in Waterford club hurling. There's no better forward than Morris in fairness. And, and it's not necessarily just the figures you look after his name, but his overall contribution, the threat that he poses to opposition defences. He's a huge player for Lismore, and they really, he's the I suppose the Jenga piece that is so vital to that Lismore team. And again, Lismore are a team that have been, I suppose, thereabouts in recent years. They'll be looking at, if they could get a victory here against 4 Mile Water, they're in a quarter final. They'll be looking at going a step or two further if they can get to, maybe a semi-final or a final. And for so many clubs, I suppose that, if you get the right side of the draw, avoid Ballygunner, you have an opportunity of qualifying maybe for a semi-final or even a final. And that's the big target, for all the clubs this weekend is, can they get a run of form, get a couple of, as I said, the structure, a couple of wins will put you in a quarter final. And then, as I said, you're within touch and distance of the real business end of the Senior Hurling Championship.
Do you reckon it'll be Lismore or 4 Mile Water, Brian, to make it 2 wins out of 2 and seal their spot in the knockout stages?
Yeah, again, you'd have to think that, Lismore are just, just a fraction ahead of where Four Water are at this stage. They maybe have that little bit more of experience at the the latter stages of club championship. I'd give them a hesitant vote in that one. But you'd have to admire, I suppose, particularly under Michael Ryan, the ability of Four Water the last day when it looked as if they were in trouble to grind out a victory and get themselves back in that game, because you really had that result gone differently against Ballysaggart, you'd be under immediate pressure. As having an early win, they're within touch and distance of the knockout stages. May not happen this weekend for Four Water, but I'd still fancy them to maybe come second in the group and qualify for the quarterfinals.
Well, former Déise defender and Munster Express writer Brian Flannery, thanks a million for your time today, and enjoy all the games over the weekend.
Cheers, Tomas.
Now you're hurling. Lorna Porca with Tomas McCarthy on WLR.